Hi, everyone. So, I took this weekend off to do some social media detox, technology detox. And it's always a good thing that when we do these things, right? I mean, everyone should do this um, as frequently as they possibly can because there's so much more to life than this aspect of it that we are so, I would say, almost dependent on it these days. But the topic of today, what I want to talk about today, is something that I have touched upon on prior content that I've done many times before in different ways, right? Because it's just part of what I discuss and talk about here on this channel, on these aspects of this journey of life that we all go through in our own way, based upon our own circumstances and all that stuff. And today I want to do a more in depth um, approach into these things based upon a little bit of research that I have done. So I'm probably going to be doing a lot of reading here. Well, it's not a lot, it's probably a couple pages, right? Um, and then through each one of these bullet points, I'll touch upon it a little. I'm going to try to keep this short because there's no need to um, go much beyond what is said here because this explains everything in a very short and concise manner. So, first things first, okay, I want to give credits because this data that I'm about to share with all of you here was mostly compiled by palliative care observations by a nurse called Bronnie Ware during her years of tending to patients in their final weeks of their lives. And what I'm going to be talking about here is what everybody goes through, what happens to everyone as we approach our final days. And this is obviously a generalized version of the data because if you would want it, you could break it down between male and female to see that there will be differences between male and female on some of these, regrets that people have when they're approaching their final days of their journeys, so to speak. So let me take a look here. Um, let's Is this the first one or is this the continuation? No, that's the continuation. So the first one. All right. So this is no particular order, okay? It's just I just I just wrote it down. However, I got the data from. All right. So let me lean this in here. Maybe I can read it without having to, look at it too much. Living a life expected by others. That's the first bullet point. Okay, living a life expected by others. Wishing for the courage to live a life true to themselves rather than fulfilling the expectations of family, society, or peers. And I've been talking about this on my content here. I don't even know for how long, for as long as this channel's been here, right? Over a year now. Because we all do this. This is part of all these concepts, ideas, and things that are not even a part of us, naturally speaking, that we have developed within ourselves to our upbringing, our education, and the environment we grew up in. It's part of that conditioning that I've always talked about, right? This is just how we kind of design ourselves to be as we're growing up. So most of us, for the most part, and obviously I'm generically speaking here, so yeah, there might be exceptions to the rule, but most of us, that's what we do. We live a life based on the expectation of others. I've talked about this so many times here, right? So this is one of the regrets that people have, that they wish that they had the courage to live a life true to themselves rather than fulfilling the expectations of family, society, or peers. And this is really how everyone should live their lives. Not only is it the right decision, but it's a wise decision to do this. So as the second point, and this one is more, it's more from the male perspective based on the data that I've got. So even though it's generalized, this one is mostly the males that had this one. I don't know what was the one for the females, but feel free to do a little bit of research yourself if you're more curious about this to find out. Shouldn't be that hard to find that information. But this one is more from the male side, okay? Working too hard, wishing to have spent less time and energy on professional grind and career obligations. A regret most strongly expressed by male patients who miss their children's youth and partner companionship. And I'm sure that this whole thing will also apply to females, some aspects of it anyway, the part where the partner companionship thing. Because today, most people, most couples, both people work, unless you are in a situation where the husband makes a good amount of money that the wife doesn't have to work, which is not the norm these days. Yeah, there are cases like that out there, but it's not the norm. So generally speaking, both the husband and the wife, they will have to work. And the reason why this one applies more to males, specifically the part about regretting missing their children's youth, is because this is what mothers do, right? They spend more time with their children than the fathers, uh, generally speaking, because that's what mothers do. That's what being a mother is all about, right? For the most part. So the husband is more likely not to be around during some of these phases of the children growing up and doing certain activities, perhaps, that the mother will be more active and present in it. So that's the differentiation there on this specific one. So for the third one, we have suppressing feelings, wishing for the courage to express true emotions and thoughts honestly instead of keeping the peace or avoiding conflict with others. So what's this all about? It's the conformity thing that we all do, right? For the most part, it's that way of living that it's just how we usually do things, again, because of our upbringing and society expectations and all that stuff. These things are all interconnected in one way or another, right? Because that's how we do stuff. People don't usually express their true emotions or their thoughts honestly, out of fear, out of how are other people going to perceive me? How are other people going to judge me? All of these things. And how many times I talked about these things in here? That we always care too much, usually speaking, right? About what other people think about us, how they feel about us, how they see us, how they perceive us. When what really matters is how you see yourself, how you feel about yourself, how you perceive yourself. Because that will be the biggest factor in how your own life unfolds in a positive or not so positive manner for yourself. So do you see how all these things are deeply interconnected and affect each other here? Now let's see where this continues. Okay. So for the fourth one is losing touch with friends. Now this one is a little more complicated, I would say, because we live in a day and age now that who can really say, and perhaps this is miscalculating it here based on my personal experience, right? But who out there these days has actually real friends? And what I mean by that is you will know who your real friends are when you go to certain things in life and then there's like basically no support. People disappear, people vanish from your life, people become distant, all these things, right? This happens a lot. Why? Because those people were not really your friends. They were a part of your life because it was convenient to them, because they were getting something out of you. And yeah, this is going to sound a lot judgmental, but it's just the way most people are these days, sadly speaking. True, genuine friendship is a very rare commodity these days. And if you are one of the people that are fortunate enough to have these things in your life, you should cherish it like you cherish family, closed ones, a partner, because that's how important these things really are in life. It plays a major role, it helps a lot in a lot of ways when we have these things around us because it's so much more bearable when we go through certain things in our lives to have someone at our side to support us in some way, shape, or form, um, emotionally and all of that stuff, than having to go through the whole thing alone. Because when that happens, it's more painful and it's harder. It's just the way it is. So losing touch with friends, right? Wishing to have put more time, effort, and active communication into maintenance life, into maintaining life, long friendships. Sometimes we have really good friends, but because of life and us moving around places and sometimes even countries, we lose touch with certain people. And but if if they were really good friends, true friends, we never forget people like that. And every once in a while, you remember, oh, I remember that person. Yeah, I wonder what happened to them. What are they doing today? And with the advent of technology, that's one of the good things about technology, right? It makes it easier for you sometimes to get back in touch to some people if you want to, because it might be easier to track them down, find them if they use these things like everybody else does, right? If they are in some sort of social media somewhere. If they're not, yeah, it's going to be a lot harder. But most people have some sort of footprint on the internet these days, even if it's minimal. So it makes it easier for people to find each other again if that's what they want, to reconnect with old friends or whatever, you know. So this is one of the things that people also regret, losing touch with, you know, friends, people that mattered in their lives, that they just, you know, for one reason or another lost touch with it and then never reconnected. And then for the fifth one, um, and this one is big, and I talked about this too. I talk about this all the time. Everything that I'm listing here on this on this subject that I'm talking about, based on this data that this nurse compiled over the years working with people in the final days of their lives, right, is based upon all these things that I've been talking about for over a year here on this channel. And I always talk about these things. I'm constantly talking about these things because these things matter. So for the fifth one, not choosing happiness. Wishing to have realized sooner that happiness is a conscious daily choice rather than remaining stuck in familiar restrictive habits and fear of change. Happiness is a state of being that you make it for yourself. Based on this conscious daily choice that we have of choosing how to do things, what to do, and all of these things that I talk about here all the time, right? But what do we normally do instead? We always choose the comfort zone. Out of fear, anxiety, and whatever other emotions and feelings that surface, because we begin to think and overanalyze, how will other people see me if I do this a different way? How are people going to judge me? And then what do? We end up not choosing happiness for ourselves. We sacrifice our own happiness doing things such as people pleasing, making everyone else about, around us in our lives happy but ourselves. So of course that at some point when you're reaching your final days, you're going to look back and you're going to regret these things. But the saddest thing about this whole data set that I'm sharing with you guys here is that for the most part, these things only happen, these things only trigger when you are approaching your final days. And more recently, I would say that for a lot of people, these things begin to happen and surface. Once you begin reaching your 50s and stuff, and if you start doing some reflection and things like that about your own life and how it's been so far, and you begin to look back at things, and then you have the clarity to see, you begin to realize, wow, I think I've been doing it all wrong. You may think it's funny, especially if you're young in your 20s, right? You may think it's funny now, but there will come a point where you will have these realizations and you will be telling yourself these things, and you're going to be like, wow. And this is how it works. So keep that in mind. So the point of this video is there's a different way that we can choose for ourselves, a different path which we can live our lives based upon. And the biggest thing is when we begin reflecting on things and put into action the whole awareness, living in the moment, being present thing that I talk about almost all of the time here, that is the key to make it so that these things don't happen to you when we're finally reaching the finish line of our own journeys here. Because like I said many times before, remember, our time is finite here. We're all going to reach that finish line one day, one way or another. This is not something that can be dismissed. It will happen to every single one of us. Every single one of us is going to reach that point someday. And there will be many that will be feeling exactly like I was talking about on these bullet points here. And then those have chose to live their lives to the wisdom of knowing and understanding how to avoid these things from becoming a thing and happening. That'll be the difference between the ones that will be like, you know what, I think I did good. I think I can live now and be at peace with everything that I've done and all the choices that I've made. As opposed to being like, wow, I should have been myself more often. I shouldn't have worried so much about what other people thought about me. And all of the things that go along those lines, right? And this is really all I wanted to talk about today. The video ended up being longer than I thought it would be. But I think this is very valuable information that it's important for it to be shared, and people should apply a lot of this stuff into their own lives to make it better, because it definitely will make it better. If you like the channel, don't forget to leave a like, share, subscribe. It helps the channel grow, reach more people, and that's the only reason why I make these videos. And I will catch you all on the next one. Be safe and take care, my friends. Until next time.